My name is Joe Prim, and I am the host of Prepare.Defend.Lead. In this episode, I'm going to bring you an interview with a guy that I have wanted to speak with for some time, Frank Sell. So if you're interested in an interview, I know it's been a while. I'll catch you on the other side of the intro.
The comfort and distractions of today collide to indulge our desires and provide a slow death by apathy. A superior primitive ethos exists. Prepare for tomorrow. Defend what you value and lead those you love. This mindset is the foundation of living an authentic life as a bold, disciplined man resolute in your mission. Prepare, defend, lead. Your mission. Own it. Own it.
All right, here we go with another episode of PDL. It has been a while since I have done an interview, and it might be a little while again with the internet shut off as we prepare for the move. The internet's a little bit spotty here with just operating off of the cell phones as hotspots. So hopefully as we get this move done to Homestead 2.0 and Texas Hill Country, things will change and this podcast will continue to evolve. But I'm really excited to bring you this episode with Frank Sell. I used to listen to Frank's podcast, Armored Up Man. I really enjoyed his podcast, and that was quite some time ago. So it's somebody who's been on my radar for a while, somebody that I've been following on social media. And Frank is a real Renaissance man. He is committed to his personal growth, and he's never afraid to try something new and to really push the envelope. So we have a really interesting conversation about overcoming generational thought patterns with one of his, he calls it Frankisms of whose thinking are you thinking? And we get into a little bit about that. We talk about the podcast that he was doing, Armored Up Man, and why he was so passionate enough to start a podcast about men in our society and the kind of hole that we seem to find ourselves in. And then we talk about his new venture right now that I've watched on social media start up from a concept and him designing up the cans for his coffee company and launching his coffee company, and watching some of the wins and some of the struggles on social media has been really cool. So I really enjoyed this conversation that we had. So I'll jump into that in a minute. As always, if you do like this podcast, if you like what I am trying to do here, what I'm attempting to do here, to challenge and encourage men to prepare, defend, and lead at home in their communities. That is, in a nutshell, what we are attempting to do here. So if you could share this podcast, if you could review this podcast, and you can also go to Prepare.Defend.Lead.com, check out the new book I wrote, and buy apparel there. That all helps come back to support this podcast, to pay for the equipment, to pay for the website, to pay for these things, to keep this mission moving forward. With that out of the way, we'll jump right into this episode with Frank Sell. PDL, Frank Sell, good to have him on. I've been listening to, he had a podcast for a while called Armored Up Man that I enjoyed listening to, and I've been following him on Instagram for a while as his coffee company has taken off, and watching it kind of be born from an idea to now a full-fledged concept has been awesome to see. So wanted to have him on just to talk a little bit about anything and everything. So glad to have you, Frank. Can you start out, just kind of share a little bit about yourself and some of your passions and what you like to do and where you're at?
Sure thing, Joe. Man, first thing, I'm super honored to be on your podcast and sharing with your audience. So a little bit of the big picture. I'm Frank Sell. I'm a father of two teenagers. My daughter Madison, 17. My son Frank Jr. He's just turned 16. Been self-employed for nearly 20 years. And that journey started kind of with a lot of, it's my mantra with what you kind of talked about, the coffee business and so on. And, Home with a Hustle is, I bought a $100 videotape learn a new trade, and I taught myself. I quit my job, and as I say, I beat the street so damn hard, I swore I get a bill for the potholes someday. So that's kind of an open book from there.
Good deal. Yeah, from following you, you seem like you're one of those guys like me that seems to always find the hard way, or always find a harder way to do things than everybody else is doing them.
Yeah, man, it is really hard until, you learn that nothing gets easier in life. Just we get better. And, there's guys like you and me out there, and women too, that, what I really noticed with the coffee brand, yes, the commodity is coffee, but what I really come to understand what I'm selling is permission, because when people start hearing stories like yours or like mine, they're saying, man, that guy, he just didn't quit. He had an idea and he just took one small step. He didn't know everything. He just took action. So really selling that permission, and that's what, sharing our stories, that's what it is. It's just, it's giving people permission to say, hey man, it's okay. Just get up, take another swing, maybe swing a little smarter.
Yeah, right. Next time, right? Your next at bat. So where did the idea for the coffee come from? Where did this come from? Because I like I said, it's been fun to watch you kind of push it through, kind of from the idea and the label design and setting it up. So where did the idea come from, and how did you make this happen, Frank?
Man, it's part of my process. It's a really deep rabbit hole. So like the foundation of my thinking process is, who's thinking am I thinking? And so that's generational patterns. I'm Frank Sell the fourth. My son's the fifth. And so I've done a lot of the heavy work on my thought process and being present. And so I have a brand. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, obviously you can't see me, but I have, almost a foot long red beard. And so, I think it was 2017, I started a brand called Baby Beard Club. And I started that really because it was in alignment with what you said, the armored up man. I've come to realize, my own tribe, it's the armor, the armored up man is not necessarily what the outside perception is, but it's the armor of discernment and wisdom to be able to discern the information before it gets into your heart, because, out of your heart flows everything. And so with that, here I have this idea of building a brand around men, and I have this idea of helping share my experiences in life to help men grow. And so I started Baby Beard Club, and one of my beard oils was called Get Shit Done, because it had essential oils to help you focus and concentrate. So I live in central Kansas, just outside of Wichita, Kansas, and there was a coffee company over there. There was called a contract canning company. So it's a cold brew coffee company. They can coffee products for like name brand people you would see on your stores, Kroger's or Hy-Vee, whatever. Well, they saw my beard oil, and they're all about, pro-America and just getting shit done and, just having fun. And so they bought, one of the owners, they bought a bottle of beard oil from me online through the website. And I noticed they're Wichita, and I noticed they sold coffee. I was like, man, I like coffee. So I'll just drop it by the plant. And they're like, cool, bro. And so I stopped over there, and we hit it off. And so I started buying coffee beans from them for my personal use. I would grind them up and everything. And with the beard brand, I bought some stickers, just little 2-inch stickers to give away with orders. We've all ordered something and got a sticker and thought that was really cool. So I thought it would be cool to give away Get Shit Done stickers with the beard oil. Well, at the same time, I had ordered a couple pounds of coffee beans for myself, for my personal use, from my new friends in Wichita. And so these two packages come in on the same day, and they're sitting on my desk. I have a bag of coffee and a box of stickers that say Get Shit Done. So I thought it would be pretty cool to take and put a Get Shit Done sticker on a bag of coffee and post that on Facebook. And people instantly were like, bro, is that literally Get Shit Done coffee? How do I buy it? And so just being present in the moment, I just took that picture and put it on my website and started selling coffee. I called the guys, back at the coffee plant, and I was like, hey man, I'm selling your coffee. It's Get Shit Done coffee. And they're like, cool, man. How much do you want? We'll wholesale to you. And so that's actually how the Get Shit Done coffee brand got started.
A perfect example of, number one, building relationships and the value of relationships in this fast-paced world we live in, right? And number two, just the whole idea that I talk about sometimes on this podcast of continuing forward, always moving forward, because you don't know what that next phone call or that next idea or that next email could be. And the moment that you stop, the moment that you quit, the moment that you don't care anymore is the moment you don't realize what you're missing out on.
Yeah, all the way. And it's something that I've learned in business as a rule, because I've been self-employed almost 20 years. And I noticed that, that business built on relationships long term are more profitable than businesses just solely based on profit. As soon as somebody can come in and offer a better profit, then you're out the door. So it's, I like people, and I like knowing where I stand with people. So building that relationship is huge.
Yeah. And something that as an introvert, I have avoided like the plague for a lot of my life. And, especially since we moved down here to Texas, and having left all my network and all my friends and all the people that I had worked with for so many years, and really built a reputation based on my work ethic and who I was, coming to a new place, I realized that if I was going to build relationships over a shorter period of time, I was going to have to go about things differently. How do you go about building those relationships? How do you go about, Frank, deciding who's worth investing that time and energy into, and who are the ones that you can just you got to let go sometimes?
Yeah, for sure. So that just comes from paying attention in life. You can really watch what people do and how they operate in life. And so it's when people, I'd say I've had this conversation with my kids lately, is that, live your life in such a way that, if somebody's going to talk bad about you, nobody believes them. And that's, going through these things and having my own experiences, my own mistakes, my own setbacks. And what you do, what I've learned, like in my first business, we were talking before this recordings, is in the hail damage. My main business is I do paintless dent repair. I fix hail damage on cars. And so I've learned through that, to ask better questions and listen. And so a lot of times when people, they'll just, kind of like I'm doing now, they'll almost ramble. They don't have a definitive answer. They can't clearly, tell you something. So it's just, you really have to learn through the process. And some of that's come through books, learning different things and just different ways to communicate. But really, for me, it's sometimes you just have to go out there and get your sword bloody, make a few mistakes, have a few setbacks, and learn for yourself. Okay, yeah, that sucked, but I'm still here. Let's go out and try to do this again more intelligently.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's a little bit different for everybody, but boy, you hit the nail on the head there with just listening. I think that in this day and age of everything being so fast-paced, if you can actually listen through what somebody has to say and ask some questions that make sense to them and listen to their answers, it's almost like a superpower. Yeah,
there's a prime example. A friend of mine, he started a company that's actually a friend's friend, and he wanted to introduce him to me, and the guy came up to me and man, he was just talking all about himself and their product and their stuff. And I can't remember who said it. It's probably like Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits, but it's more important to be impressed than impressive. And so it's kind of like we all know those people that want to story top or kind of brag about stuff, and it may be that they don't know that they're doing this, or it's their insecurity, exposing itself, that they think they have to brag on themselves. But really, when you help lift others up, basically, and listen to them and help make them feel important, it's huge when you're not trying to as my old friend says, not just have a wiener measuring contest. You can get down into the real stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think, as you mentioned, a lot of those people realize that that's what they're doing, but to the majority of people around them, you come across as very insecure when, like you said, you're always story topping or you're always just talking about yourself. You don't seem like you're very present, because it's with those people, no matter how great of a life they lived, that they want to brag about, it doesn't take very long till they're getting back to all the same stories.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Just finding new people to tell them to. It's pretty fun and pretty neat, when, like for me, going through the process of understanding who's thinking I'm thinking and being able to understand myself first, and then I can kind of have, clear ears and clear eyes, to see and hear somebody. And just, like I said, ask better questions to lead conversations in different ways. And really, it's checking my ego, because it doesn't need fed. I've franked up enough stuff. I've done enough stuff in my life already that, for most people, I really want to find, the gold in them and help them see that in themselves.
Yeah, I find it fascinating sometimes, when you do kind of break through those barriers to hear what it is that makes people tick, what it is that they do when they leave their 9 to 5. And the more you ask those questions and the more you show curiosity and interest in what it is that people will do, it's amazing the conversations or what you can actually learn from these people. And, because some people, it'll be gardening will be their thing. I remember meeting years ago a guy, and making salsa was this guy's jam. That was what he did all year round. It didn't matter. He was growing his own tomatoes and peppers and selling his own salsas. But I never would have known about that had I not taken the time to ask and kind of dig a little bit deeper in this guy. And he started bringing in salsa to work every day, and it was great.
Yeah, all the way. It's just relationship building. So many of us, like the old book, How to Win Friends and Influence People and different stuff like that. We're just, it's pretty sad that we're in this instant gratification society, but at the same time, it makes it easier for winners to win, from just showing up is so, man, it's such a big deal in business and life in general, just showing up, and then having concern with, actually having concern. And it goes really deep back to like some of the principles I've learned, like in Christianity, nowadays we've lost the principality or the meaning of being a meek man. And a meek man, a couple thousand years ago was a man that was trained in war, trained to prepare, defend, lead, but his ego was in such a good place, kind of stoicism, physically, everything, that we have this so-called toxic masculinity today of, braggadocious guys and guys think they have to be, overtly and externally over the top to be manly. And, the true sense of meek is, the ability to endure hardships and wrongdoings and still persevere. And some of the baddest men that I have ever met they're cool, they're calm, they're collected. But they've done some very, very dangerous things in their lives.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes with confidence, and I think that the only way to build confidence is to do things. And we live in a society right now of where so few people are doing much, where they're staying as protected as possible in this candy land that we live in at the moment. And that kind of comes back to, if you're not doing things, if you're not experiencing things, if you're not failing, if you're not tripping and falling and getting back up again and realizing that scraped knee wasn't as bad as you always thought it was going to be, or that bee sting isn't as bad as thought it was going to be. I was having a conversation with my kids a while back, and my daughter, she's been, of course, stung by a bee maybe a couple times, and my son has never been stung by a bee. And telling him it's not as bad as you think it would be. And my daughter chimes in. She's like, yeah, it's not nearly as bad as you think it would be. She said, it's not as scary, or I'm not nearly as scared of bees now that I have been stung. And it's a perfect example of once you've experienced something, once you've suffered through something, once you've risen to that challenge, all of a sudden the next obstacle doesn't quite seem as bad as it would have seemed.
Yeah, all the way. And it's, it's just like, this goes back to that, your kids, they, what we do speaks so much, so loudly that they can't hear what we say a lot of times. And,
yeah,
and it's, my kids and I raced dirt bikes and last fall, summer, and I had a pretty bad old crash, broke some ribs and stuff, but my kids, number one, my kids race with me. So they saw me out there achieving as well, not just screaming, not just a moto dad from the sideline, or soccer dad, whatever. I'm out there in the hunt as well. And then they saw me pick myself up, and, they saw me, what I call, like before we got on here, the patience in the pause. I took a few days. I probably should have took a few weeks. I probably should have gone to the doctor, all kinds of stuff, but I didn't, cause I knew, that I was going to be all right, and just have a little bit of patience, slow down for, a few days and get back after it. And nobody's going to feel sorry for you. And if they do feel sorry for you, it's probably because, they don't have a whole lot else going on in their life, and they need some kind of drama or something. So that's, the whole get shit done mentality is just, yeah, man, that sucked. What are you going to do about it? Personal responsibility. Let's go.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple times, your podcast. What was the focus of Armored Up Man, and why did you feel the drive to have started, feel strongly enough about it actually to start a podcast? That takes a little bit of motivation. Why did you do that, and what was the message of Armored Up Man, and what's still your message? What's your thought as you think about the men and you see the men, especially the young men in our society right now that just seem kind of lost?
Yeah. So at the time I was a big consumer of information, either through books, through podcasts like this, or videos and things. And I had been watching, listening to, Sean Whalen and the Lions Not Sheep, and Ryan Mickler, Order of Men, and so on. And so I had been through experiences where I had children with their mother, and, that didn't turn out the way that I thought it would. And that relationship ended. So I got into another relationship, and that really kind of, it spurred a lot of introspection and growth in me, and the realization that everywhere I go, there I am. So I have to take, personal responsibility for some of the things. And there was a book, called A Man of Steel and Velvet by Aubrey Adlin. And, it really said, okay, in true manhood, this may not be my fault, but at the end of the day, if I really call myself a man, then it's my responsibility to take care of this problem. So I started looking at myself and started recognizing the generational patterns, because whether it's through the Bible or through whatever modality you want to look at, like, there's so many similarities that, like sins of the father, sins of the son. And, they say, talk about these, Enneagrams can be passed down, 7 generations, and so I started looking at the patterns in my life and realized, a lot of these patterns, it's not how I really feel. It's not my thinking. It's just something I'm repeating. So I started digging into it and find out, from 0 to 7, we get all of our social programming, all of our, our life skills programming. And then most of us, we go through life and just repeat that 7 years until we die. We never stop and think about, is this how I really feel about this? Is this how I really want to have a marriage? Is this really how I want to raise my kids? How I want my finances? How I want my income sources to look like? We just assume. So I took the responsibility to say, no, I don't like that, or I would like something different, and to go out and get new information about it. And so I was at an event in Phoenix, called Meltdown in the Desert, and Sean and Ryan Mickler were both speaking there. And I was sitting in the bleachers, and I'm just like, I'm listening to them, and I'm talking to them in a one-on-one personal way. And I realized, like, you know what? Really, they had their circumstances, their situations in life, and they're just explaining how they overcame those. And I think I look at my story of I had a very toxic custody battle. There were things that were happening that were not okay. And so I fought really hard to protect my kids and to get, custody of my kids. So for five or 6 years now, I've had full custody. My kids have lived with me full time. I worked super hard to try to save a marriage that was toxic in the end. So going through all these things, and I thought, there's lions, not sheep. There's order of man. So I really felt like I had been equipping myself with armor, and they talk about, in Ephesians, putting on the armor of God and all this stuff. Like all this spiritual warfare that people don't even acknowledge or realize, I had been equipping myself with armor. And so I literally just went to GoDaddy and I thought, armored up man. And I went to GoDaddy and bought the domain. And I thought, there it is. I was sitting in the bleachers. I bought the domain. And so then I kind of started putting my thoughts together and started sharing stuff. And then, like we were talking before we got on the recording, I'd built this persona of the armored up man. And then last year, 2019, actually, I walked out of my marriage. And so it was like, holy shit, who am I now? What's going on here? So that took some processing. So that's kind of why I stepped away from that. But what I realized is through this whole process of whose thinking I was thinking is, I didn't enter that marriage with my spiritual best sense, with my soul's best interest. I had maybe a hidden agenda or a hidden motive, which, we shouldn't have. We should come with no motive or agenda other than I want to spend time with this person. This person, I want to be around them. And so taking personal responsibility, I looked at that and said, okay, I see what happened. And so I looked at how hard I had worked to become the man that person needed and realized that I had become that person. And this person was not willing to grow with me, and it become toxic with my children and my relationship. And so then I realized that I totally left that relationship with love, because in my mind, in my heart, I feel like I did everything that I had been called to do. And I completely feel the Holy Spirit said, Frank, you've done everything you can to help this person grow, help them release their baggage, their hurts, their traumas, but they love their traumas more than they love growth. They don't want to, that's their identity. And so it's time for you to step away. And so that's what I did. That marriage ended in 2020. And so that opened up a whole new episode of life.
So you talk a lot about going through the process, and it sounds like when you talk about going through processes, a lot of self-evaluation. How do you go about that, Frank? How do you process things? How do you think things through? Because I think everybody's a little bit different in how they operate that way.
Yeah, so I look at things. I try to almost like pros and cons, or what I've learned is that, so many of us, we're really good at pointing out what's wrong, and what we don't want. And I can't quite remember the book, but it talks about, make a list of things like you don't want in your life and things that you do want. And like say, I don't like, having more bills than money. I don't like being out of shape. I don't like X or whatever. But then on the other side, write what you do like. And I just kind of like in my mind, like, holy shit, man. It's like, we have these patterns in our minds and in our hearts. Like, we have such a hard time explaining what we do want, because we're always so focused on the negative, what we don't want. And so I went through the process and tried to say, okay, this is what the situation is as I see it. And then I try to say, could I be wrong? Could I be right? Where could I be different? Where could I be better? And just try to have an honest opinion, and then also having outside mentors. So, and that was a really big deal. For me, it was 2013. when I literally had my come to Jesus moment. I came to Christ, and I had a thirst for growth and wisdom. And so number one is finding people that have the results that you want in that area of life. So if it's in your physical life, find somebody that has results in that life. If it's marriage, find somebody that has results, not your buddy that's been divorced 5 times, or your buddy that's your beer drinking buddy, for health or whatever. So for me, it was finding somebody that had results that I could then start to understand who's thinking I'm thinking, and develop that internal barometer of, right and wrong based on correct information. Because most of us like I said, we repeat that pattern from 0 to 7, and all of our people around us are repeating the same patterns. And so it's going out and reading the books, investing in myself, so I could develop that base of discernment and wisdom. And then now in life situations, I can look at them and say, yeah, I may have been a dick right there. And then owning up and apologizing, and then finding out how to improve. Or maybe I shouldn't have, spent money on that, and try to say, okay, what's a better way to spend money next time? So most of us, we just get stuck on, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. I'm such a dumbass. Oh man, we just go down that rabbit hole without ever asking, okay, what is a better way? Help me see where I can grow, and I can improve.
Yeah, it takes a lot of humility to find people that, even people that you admire, but to ask them questions and show yourself and be vulnerable enough to let them know that you're struggling in an area, or be humble enough to listen to their responses and their advice and their ideas. And then at the same time, it takes some real action to act on that advice, rather than just keep repeating what you've always done.
Yeah, all the way. And it's like the old saying, when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, will change. And like the way I look at it is that, there's a book called Dollars Want Me, and kind of the premise of that book is that, God is my supply and my supply is abundant. And I look around, like, everything that I want has already been created for me. I don't have to create anything really, except the me that shows up in this creation. And so, it just kind of takes ownership back to myself. So the person that has the lifestyle, the health, the marriage, the finance, whatever I want, how do they operate within this creation? And then try to go out and find that knowledge and equip myself with it.
Yeah, I've talked before on this podcast about the parable of the talents, and I really think it's almost, well, I shouldn't say even almost, I think it is our obligation to take those 5 talents or 2 talents or 1 talent that we've been given, and especially in this day and age where knowledge is everywhere, and we can communicate with people all over the world. We're not pigeonholed into, asking questions of, or seeking guidance from, a few people in a small village or a small neighborhood. Really, the whole world is our oyster at this point. And I think the whole real thought on that parable is understanding that, we're obligated. This is not just something that, hey, look, I've given you this, you can do what you want with it, and, please yourself with it. This is an obligation not only to yourself, but to your family and to your tribe and to your community and to your church and everybody to, take as much advantage as possible and to utilize and leverage everything that we're given to the positive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's just like, for me, it feels like, God loves me so much. He's provided all this stuff, provided everything, and just gently applies pressure until I'm ready to get it. I can learn it the first time, or I can make the same mistake 10 times. Just how painful do I want it to be before I get it?
right? Sometimes in the middle of those struggles and fights, I kind of come to a point where I'm like, okay, what are you trying to show me? Maybe I just want to learn. I want to figure out because I am ready to be done with this struggle.
All the way.
So I hear you mention a lot about who's thinking, am I thinking? And I think it's a great slogan because it's really easy to remember and really easy to kind of throw back at yourself when you start to question things. Where did you come up with that, and how has just that simple slogan or saying or motto, how has that impacted you and helped you set out in the right direction?
Man, it's just, my buddies call them Frankisms. It's kind of on my coffee, beat the damn street so hard I get billed for potholes, or do it scary till you do it skilled. It was just kind of like, I don't know. It just, that's how I speak to myself, and that's how I phrase it to myself. Cause like, in was it Proverbs, getting all the wisdom, King Solomon, and so it's like, it's the wisdom. So it's, it's the thinking. And I think it comes from this, I'm not sure what the correct term, of what this is, but, so basically if we don't like our results in life, our results come from our actions comes from our thinking, and our thinking comes from our inputs. And so somewhere in there, I just asked myself kind of, whose thinking am I thinking? Because I started to reflect on the patterns in my life. And so all of our growth is in our patterns. Like I said, the same mistakes will be keep getting handed to us until we're ready to own them and extract the gold, the knowledge, the wisdom out of them. So I'm looking at these things. I'm like, oh yeah, well, so-and-so acted this way. I didn't really know any different, but now that I know, I have a choice. Do I, get new thinking, or do I just keep doing the same painful stuff that's painful to me and everybody around me? Cause they're all helping me learn and grow in this experience. So it's just part of, how I, just kind of keep it simple, stupid. I got to think, whose thinking am I thinking? And it's just something that just kind of popped out of my mouth one day.
I like it. I believe, like you said, it's very deep though, because it can go into, as you mentioned earlier, the generational things, and realizing, if you're only thinking what you've always been thinking, or only thinking what others have shown you to think, then are you really yourself? And, if we are each uniquely created and each uniquely and wonderfully made, then there is an intent behind who we are, what our abilities are, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. And if we fall into that generational thinking, or we fall into, really, as you see so much in this world around us, really right now, of everybody just kind of following that same pattern and just parroting the same messages, and really becoming the hive mind and just clones of one another. It's a simple saying like that, I think, can have a tremendous impact if it can just break through and people catch and understand what it is. It's a basic, simple message, but it's actually very complex, I think. Yeah,
I get that response quite a bit when I say that to people, or I shoot it in a message or something, and I get the same message that, number one, what do I mean? And then I kind of expand it and explain it a little bit. And then I just keep getting messages from the same people or same conversations, like, dude, that rabbit hole is so deep. I know, man. It's a good one.
You've been down it a few times.
Yeah. I've been way down it. And it's fun. But sometimes it's a little painful when you kind of start realizing, like I said, everywhere I go, there I am. So, I've got ownership in a lot of things.
So What else you working on these days, Frank? I know you're kind of not the guy who's going to sit back and rest on his laurels, and you got a lot of different things you've done. You got any interesting projects coming up, or what are you thinking about? What are you working on these days?
One of the main things is, business wise, growing the coffee brand. That's something that I don't really have, I guess, a lot of successful experience in growing a brand or even marketing coffee. But it's going pretty well. I bought, our first pallet of our product last September. And in 5 weeks I sold out. I sold like 3,000 cans.
Wow.
And so that helped me understand a lot of, the messaging. People really resonate with, the Make America Grind Again message on it and the Beat the Streets. So really honoring that vehicle and growing it to the best I can, and then expanding into like the single serve coffee, the K-cup, stuff like that. So on the business side, trying to make some good moves, with that. And I have a distribution deal here in the state of Kansas where I went from September, I was selling cans and cases, to next week, a distributor's buying a whole pallet of coffee at once. So things are trending the right direction in that. I just want to, where I can, nurture it, and where I can, dump gasoline on the fire. And then, personally, I talked about ending my marriage and relationship, and kind of going through that process again of who is Frank Sell and who's thinking am I thinking, and, trying to navigate and really untangle a lot of energetic cords, because that's part of the spiritual warfare. We don't realize how wrapped up in other people's energy we get. And so unraveling all that, to where I met again an amazing woman that, as I tell her, she wowed me over 20 years ago, and I don't ever remember speaking to her or knowing her name. I was racing motocross, and her boyfriend and future husband at the time, they rode and raced, and we were kind of casual friends. And I guess you would say I was a pretty fair rider. I got to work and race, the expert kind of professional, local level. And so he kind of followed me, just through the racing series and stuff. And, I lost track of that friendship. And like I said, I never even knew her name. Nothing. All I remember was I saw her, and I was like, she asked me the other day what I thought her name was. And I said, I would have never asked myself that, but what I would have asked myself is, how fast do I have to ride this dirt bike to get a girl like you? So last year, Facebook suggested her as a friend. I saw her picture, and I'm like, man, she is gorgeous. And we had a bunch of mutual friends. And so we started chatting through Messenger, and she starts telling me about how her and her husband had ended their marriage, last year. And when she started saying his name, I was just like, well, holy shit, that's you. You're the girl that wowed me 20 years ago, and I never knew you. And so when I realized that there again, God is my supply, and my supply is abundant. And I know you've seen me on social media. I say a lot of times, whether it was 1 year, 10 years, or 20, do the work, because you never know when your moment is coming. And that's what I tell her, is like, I wasn't, my spirit told me, you're not the man she deserves, boy. So go ahead and go play, go do your things. And so when I realized who she was, I realized that, God had moved all these parts and pieces around all these years, and basically equipped me to be the man that would attract that woman. And so now it's awesome to see our relationship grow. And it's the first relationship I've ever been in, because it's come from a spiritual place, not a place of the flesh, which is kind of where my other relationships were from. I didn't have that foundation of who's thinking I was thinking, the spiritual awareness. I didn't have the wisdom that I have now. And so that's why I tell her that, it's the first relationship that I've ever been in that I can completely love myself, because, you the things that I value are different now, and it's from a spiritual level, and that's where my choices came from. And that's where she and I resonate. And it's been wonderful to grow that and, to show our kids, this is the true agape love, the Christ-like love. We have no agenda, no hidden intentions, other than just to grow our lives together.
Yeah, to support and admire and, each other, it's interesting the dynamics of relationships when you can take that step back and look at it with clearly, almost from outside of yourself, and take your emotions and your needs, or again your thinking, out of the equation, and see things from a different angle and see things from somebody else's viewpoint, and see that person for who they really are versus who you're trying to manipulate them into being or who you want them to be. It's powerful.
Oh, 100%. And that's where most of us, we're so uncomfortable, just being by ourselves, because that voice is in our head, and that stinking thinking, we have a lack of faith, a lack of trust that, our provider has already provided everything.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting, a lot of times they say nowadays, a lot of people refer to coming up with their best ideas while they're in the shower, or having breakthroughs in thoughts, things that they've been trying to process while they're taking the shower. And what's interesting, I don't remember if it was on a podcast or a book I read that was talking about that, was because that is one of the very few times in our modern world where you are silent and forced to be by yourself. There's no podcast playing. There's no music in the background. There's no kids tugging at your sleeve wanting to show you the Lego project that they built. It's just you and you alone, forced to be there and focus on, and gives you an opportunity to slow down and focus on your thoughts. And I think that's powerful. Just the thought of spending that time alone to think things through, to allow things to process, because we're so quick to turn on the radio or the next podcast or the next audio book that we lose out on that time that we need to process what's actually going on in our lives.
Yeah, all the way. I mean, it's like, what the Bible talks about, going in the closet and praying. Don't pray, out in front of everybody for, expectation of acknowledgement and stuff. And it's getting down to that, that garden moment, like, in Genesis, it says we're created like them. We're connected to the Creator. We're spiritual beings, and we signed up for this human experience, and just having, like I said earlier, the patience and the pause, sitting back, taking a breath, whether it's sitting still, doing some deep breath work, I do some ice baths, I got a sauna, just finding some place to close yourself off from the world and kind of sit with your thoughts, and then, start questioning those thoughts. Like, is this how I really feel? Is this how I really want my life to be? And then, adjust accordingly. Yes or no, then, go find the information.
Yeah. And the information's everywhere today. There's absolutely no excuse for not pressing forward and not learning, where once you discover, and for many people, it's not that difficult to understand or to see where they're struggling. And a lot of times I think that's the reason why we turn on that podcast or turn the radio up a little bit louder. It's because we don't want to come face to face with where we're struggling or where our failures are. We would rather cover them up with somebody else's voice and to distract us, to sedate us, to get us to hide from whatever that might be. And once you do face it and come face to face with it, there are so many different people out there with good ideas and great ways to help you work through those problems. And whether it be, becoming a better father and looking at your responsibilities as a father differently, or marriage, or learning a new trade, like you mentioned earlier with your own business. There are opportunities out there, and really they're endless. And the longer that you want to stick your head in the sand and hide from these opportunities, is the longer you stay apathetic and stop moving forward. And the reality is, as I've said on the podcast before, even when you think that you've slowed down or you're taking a break or you're going to stop, and for some people that may be intentional, it may be depression has sucked them down into a deep, dark hole. The reality is the world doesn't stop and time doesn't stop. So when you do finally resurface, you are behind and you've lost out on a large chunk of your life. So if you can see that in yourself, if you can notice that you're struggling in an area before you get to that point, seek out help. Look for somebody that can help. Find some advice. Find something to listen to. But spend that time with yourself each and every day. A lot of like the old spiritual works talk about self-evaluation each and every night as part of your ritual, to walk through your day, how you acted, how you responded to people, and then ask for forgiveness, ask for grace, and go about looking at doing your next day differently so that you don't fall into the same patterns of being a total jerk over and over again to the same people. And I think that's a powerful advice.
Yeah, all the way. I have like a slightly different mindset on some of that stuff. Like, in the time aspect of things, like, time is just a made up construct to a basis of our existence. And so like I was explaining to my son the other day, he was trying to make a decision about something. And I basically said it to him, like, don't let time make your decision, because you'll rush into a bad decision. And so, one thing I look at, and I totally love and enjoy what you're saying, about the darkness and the different things. And so something I look at, and kind of I've explained it to some other people, and the way I think about it myself is that, down is it's not necessarily a bad place to be. And as I say, it's just a bad place to stay. And so like the way I explain it, to myself or to my kids or other people, is that you think about if you're putting together a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle or something, and how many times do we find the missing piece on the floor? It's like, and that's kind of the analogy of, on the floor or being down, it's not a bad place. Sometimes we find the missing piece there. And it's having the patience and the pause, and like you're talking about, having the gratitude and not only asking but thanking, because the answers are already here, and just having the gratitude. Thank you for loving me so much to provide all this for my experience, my growth. Because the way I believe is that God has provided everything that I will ever need to find my way back to Him, whatever method I choose.
Yeah, I just, as far as the time, I like what you said about not letting time make your decision. I think that's perfect. I'm more thinking about some of the people who, when that darkness starts to pull you down, and there are times where you can almost feel that darkness tugging at your ankle, that depression, that abyss sucking you in. And like you said, sometimes you need to visit that place. Sometimes it is a great place of learning, but it's certainly not a place you want to stay. And the longer you stay there, the harder it is to fight back out of it. And the harder it is to see the light of day, and the harder it is to realize what you were or what you could have moving forward, because you're surrounded by such darkness and despair. And I've got the people that I know that suffer with depression, and it's a killer to see them just disappear for large segments of their life and miss out on what's going on. And that was more what I was alluding to with that, Frank.
Yeah, all the way. And it really kind of goes back to the who's thinking, are you thinking? Because, as we sharpen our minds and our bodies, as we respect our kingdom, what inputs we take from, whether it's social media, movies, what we read, what we listen to, what we eat, we can start to listen and see the patterns coming ahead of time. and say, you know what, I see you. I appreciate, what you're trying to teach me here. And I know from the experience of whatever 30 years of this, that you're not going to whip me. You may get me in the corner and beat me up, but you're not going to whip me. So come on with it. We'll sit with this for just a second, but we're not going to sit around all week for this.
Yep. For sure. Yeah. I mean, and it's a rough one. I mean, and that's why I always say, always forward. And sometimes in your life, you're only going to be crawling. And sometimes in your life, you'll be able to walk. And other times you'll have the ability to run, but you've got to continue that momentum forward and out of that dark abyss or out of where you're going, because, it'll hold you down and it'll keep you there much longer than you want to be there. I'm sure there's probably some pretty good allegories in Pilgrim's Progress about that.
Yeah, I really love what one of my mentors, Tom Shea, he wrote the book Unbreakable, Navy SEAL's Way of Life, and also a book, Three Things. But really, he was outstanding, a Navy SEAL, just an incredible career. And it's just very simple, honoring your word. What you say, if you say, like we talked about earlier, we're really good at pointing out what we don't want. Okay, so I don't want this. So what do I want? If I tell myself I want this, what am I doing to move the needle forward? And like he explains, it's the simple things, just one step. Like you're talking about, one step towards that thing that you want. Yep.
And sometimes that's all it's going to be. And it's just changing that dial, changing that mindset, and continuing forward till you gain the confidence that you need. Like we were talking about much earlier on in our conversation about the need of confidence and what confidence can give you. And it's struggling through those dark times and continuing forward and pushing forward and going through the failures and the highs and the lows and the struggles and the mistakes that create that confidence, because you know that you survived and you know that you can continue forward.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So we're coming up on an hour here, Frank, so we'll kind of wrap this up. Anything you'd like to share here as we wrap this up? Just kind of maybe some words of advice or some different things you're thinking about, or anything else that you kind of, maybe we skipped something that you kind of wanted to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, really just give yourself some slack, and realize if you're still breathing, man, it's not over. It's something that might help people. I know I like teaching this to my kids. It's the iPad method, and I get it from the 4 Agreements book. But I came up with this to teach my kids, and it's really helpful, even with myself. And so the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions, and do your best. So in life, a lot of times I'll ask myself, in a situation, iPad, or I'll tell my kids if my kids are having a disagreement or argument, or they don't like something. And I'm like, okay, iPad, what did, I can see it as an adult. What did you do? How are you looking at this? So are you impeccable with your word? Did you take this personally? Are you making an assumption? Did you do your best? So that's maybe something that I think can help a lot of people. And it's simple to, when you're in a situation, to say, iPad, what agreement did I break?
I like it. I like it a lot, Frank. More, simple ways to just kind of keep yourself accountable.
All the way. It's got to be simple for me.
Yeah, right. I'm the same way. The simpler, the better. And I think it's the same with everybody, Frank, because when you're in the heat of the moment, or you're frustrated, or your ego's getting the best of you, it's not really a time for complex, and the simpler the saying, or the simpler the thought or idea, I think the better, just because, you need simple at that point when the emotions are running.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, thanks, Frank, for joining me for this episode of Prepare, Defend, Lead. Like I said, I've been following you on social media for a while and listened to your podcast and been wanting to have a conversation with you for a long time. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and record this episode, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Man, it's been totally my pleasure, Joe. It's a lot of fun. For your listeners and followers, we talked about, I made a discount code for homeofthehustle.com. So use code PDL for 10% off. And you can find me at Home of the Hustle, Facebook and Instagram, or Frank Sell, SELL, on social media. So man, thanks again for asking me. I'm honored.
No, absolutely great to have you on, Frank, and I will make sure that all your information is in the show notes, and I'll have to order up some coffee for myself.
All right, sounds great.
Thanks, Frank, and have a good one, and we'll be in touch.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Bye.